Hello and welcome back to the Mixing Music Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Kei, and with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Lu Vidicus. Have we done that one before?
I think we made some Bible reference at some point, but I was typing in the name and I was like, shit, I didn't think of the one. Leviticus.
Nice. I love how we start off with a biblical reference and then you immediately swear in the episode.
But see, it wouldn't be me if I didn't. It wouldn't be me.
I'm giving you a hard time.
If anybody meets me and there's no sarcasm in the conversation, just know I'm uncomfortable with you at that moment. We're still getting to know each other. But once I'm comfortable with you, sarcasm galore.
Well, welcome back to the Mixing Music Podcast. I'm really happy to be here, and Lou is happy to be here too. This is now our first recording. This is the first time we're recording in the new year. It is January 6th. This episode has not come out until a couple weeks later. But it's our first recording in the new year. We've had good year ends, I think, Lou and I both. Do you want to do any update? How was your brief update of the holiday season for you, Christmas and New Year's, huh?
You know, it's kind of funny. I was really kind of thinking about this last week where it's like, you know, every year the holidays is kind of a funny time where I get a bunch of different styles of work at the same time. So I got hired for like a bunch of like room tuning, studio design as always, a bunch of live events, but a lot of those live events are like holiday events. And it was kind of funny because there was a moment where I thought to myself, I'm like, dude, are you really doing a holiday gig? And then I'm like, wait, these holiday gigs pay so well and they're so low pressure that some days I'm like, I don't need to be at a stadium every day because I'm getting paid the same stadium rate doing Santa lighting up houses on Candy Cane Lane, which I don't know if you saw that movie Candy Cane Lane with, what's his name? I forget his name, but Candy Cane Lane came out last year. Apparently this is the street that people do it on, and I was kind of like sitting there and I was like thinking, I'm like, damn, the holiday seasons really do suck for concert season. But I'm actually kind of dope. It's kind of dope getting paid my stadium rate while sipping on hot cocoa while just watching a Santa ride around on a fire truck.
Damn straight.
Yeah,
nice.
So it's kind of funny. It was one of those where I'm really just thinking to myself, I'm like, it was a really good year. It was really awesome to tour again because I stopped touring years ago, just because I don't like being away from home. And especially now that I'm married, I have like a huge emphasis on trying to be home and trying to be around family and everything. So it was kind of cool to see that this wasn't like a pressure point that could possibly mess things up, which was a nice thing to know because now I'm getting sent tour offers for this year as well. And I'm going into this year with a little more confidence of like, okay, this shouldn't really affect our relationship or our home life. This will suck when I'm away, but now I actually have my own console and everything. Now I actually have this. I'm coming into this year with like, hell yeah, everything that happened last year led up to what could potentially be like one of the most interesting years career-wise. But I'm curious, you know. I left last year just curious for what this year holds.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens. Probably due to the election. Outside of the election and however people stood on that. Because I was going to say, there's lots of mixed opinions on how people are feeling about this year. But
it's going to be interesting. That at the very least can be said.
If we don't include people's personal perceptions on U.S. election results, mm-hmm. I think people in general are looking forward to 2025. Mm-hmm. I think there is a lot to look forward to in the future. I've been doing a lot more reading, not for the purpose of debate, but more for just personal introspective curiosity on just general pessimism bias, or I forgot what it's called.
Narcissism?
The cognitive bias of like how you perceive like everything mm-hmm. you perceive, not just music, which was something that we've talked about before, but everything that you perceived will always be perceived as better when you're about 10 to 20, between the ages of 10 and 20. Mm-hmm. Music, film, TV, food, friends, experiences. Actually, there was a little a study, a graph that I found that talked about, okay, yeah, nostalgia tends to peak at a single age. So this is a bunch of tests from various different sources, and like the most close-knit communities, the most moral society, the least political division, the happiest families, the most reliable news reporting, the best music, the best radio, the best fashion, the best economy, the best movies, the best television, the best sporting events, the best cuisine, and the perception of those things. So these are self-reported findings, how people perceive these things and report these things to the surveyor. Mm-hmm. Almost everyone, by a very high margin, perceives that the best of all of those things is around the age of 10 to 20 years old.
I like that the best news reporting is between 10 and 20.
Yeah, so like news was better when I was 10 and 20.
Yeah.
This is just really fascinating to me, and something that this is probably a fear of mine, is I'm afraid that as I age that I will lose my creativity. And luckily there's very little data and evidence to show that my creativity will be lost as I age. Openness is not typically something that is lost with age. But I will lose some cognitive plasticity, of course. And this is a deep fear of mine. Probably a subtle fear, not something that is paralyzing me, but I'm afraid to become the average person on all of those graphs. I'm afraid of the moment. I'm afraid of the moment that I can't. Yeah, I'm afraid of the moment that I can no longer relate or don't want to relate to current music, to current movies, to ideologies, I no longer think that the happiest families are possible, that there's there's too much political division now than there ever has been. These sort of self-surveyed perceptions, I find it very fascinating, because obviously, like, how do you collect data and determine what movies and music was good in what era?
Yeah, you know, I find this kind of funny because I want to play devil's advocate real quick.
Yeah,
just because I've never known you to be one to conform to the average, which is why I've always kind of been like, Dee Kei's a cool guy. You know, I like that Dee Kei's like that. You know, not everybody understands him. Sometimes people hear what he says and he comes off the wrong way. And I'm like, no. You didn't hear him right. It's okay. But I know what he meant. It's cool, because what you said is I'm scared to become one of the average statistic number people, right? But that's actually kind of the funny thing, because doesn't that also feed into it, where it's like, no, I'm still just as creative. You're kind of fighting back, pushing against it cognitively. But I also find that what I've always found charming about the older community is, hey, I'm glad you don't care to impress or agree with everything in front of you, but in a non-nihilistic kind of way. I know that a lot of people usually see older people start saying everything sucks now, but there's also that part of life where it is true, where you don't care to align yourself with everything that's new, because, you know, to be honest, you like what you like and you're at peace with what you like.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen where some mixers have like a niche. Some engineers have a niche of what type of work they like to do, and they stick to that, versus saying anymore, I have to take every opportunity that I can and learn as much as I can so I can be available for anything that I can be available to. Creativity, like you said, is not necessarily scalable in the sense of when you lose that creativity, or openness, you said, which is great. But, you know, at a certain point, I think there are those that like embrace falling into the numbers, so to speak.
Yeah, I think what I'm speaking on is more of a perception and value for self. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it's an objectively superior moral value system, to want that. I think it's more of like, I care so much about my own personal creativity, mm-hmm. that I do not want to accidentally mm-hmm. Start hating on everything, and then catch myself years later being like, why this? And like, because for me, being open to those things mm-hmm. is part of life. Mm-hmm. And if I start not liking it, then that means, to me, I'm perceiving it myself as not enjoying life.
Yeah.
Because I'm not partaking. And you're right. To your exact point, I think my fear is a little definitely irrational. And I think that the way that I said that really comes off as a sense of moral superiority, which is very interesting.
I'll be honest, I also didn't pick up on that. I didn't pick up on moral superiority, but rather a fear of seeing yourself having worked so hard to be who you are now, and then losing a little bit of that to time.
Yeah.
So pushing back against time cognitively in order to kind of keep where you're at and be proud of where you're at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not a superiority thing. It's just like, I hate to say it, but it's like looking at my hairline some days where I'm like, ooh, I'm not getting older. I still have a full head of hair. But then I look at my dad and I'm like, when did his start thinning though?
Yeah. No, I think well, the good thing is that I don't think that this is like a debilitating fear. Yeah. And I think that I have the perfect amount of fear to make sure that it doesn't happen. I don't think that I'll allow myself to happen.
No spiraling.
I'll allow myself for it to happen. So it like leaves it in my conscience, but like it's not debilitating in any way. So
yeah.
But anyway, that's something that I think about from time to time. I just want to, especially for me, whose income is based on accepting current standards of creative endeavors.
Whatever that standard is.
Yeah. Whether that means WAP, or, like I'm serious.
Yeah,
though.
No joke. I had a record come through this year that even Anna heard it and she's like, what are they saying? I was like, listen,
yeah.
I don't choose what they say. I just make it sound good. That's what I do.
Yeah, so it's like, which is like the perfect example, because that's like Leslie Brathwaite. Leslie mixed WAP.
Yeah.
And that's like a great example, because like Leslie is a openly Christian and moral man who cares strongly about his family, who doesn't allow for his children to be in the room while he's mixing songs with curse words in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
Unless
didn't know
they're getting
that.
older, that might have changed because his children are getting older.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just fascinating that he's been able to choose to continue to be open-minded. And he was the one that I don't know if he stole this quote from someone, but I stole this quote from him. The concept of, he said, what did he say? He said, the moment that you decide that current music is no longer relevant, your career no longer becomes relevant.
Yeah, there's something that Jimmy Douglas talked about on an interview that I kind of resonate with in that sense, where he's like, I've been doing this for a long time, and a lot of us kind of think we know what we're doing and what sounds good, but then you got this kid on a laptop just being like, hey, this sounds pretty cool, and you're like, okay, hold on, I'm starting to hear this a little more commonly with things that are coming through. Show me, what is this? He keeps an open mind to what's going on, and he's one of those guys that say never stop tracking. Tracking is like your bread and butter when it comes to mixing, because that's how a lot of people get to know who you are, and you can introduce yourself in a professional manner. But he's also the guy that's like, part of the reason we want to keep tracking is because it's all these new artists that are going to the label studios. So a lot of set artists have their own setups, have their own private, they have their team. So it gives them an opportunity to actually like get to know, what is this trend? What is it that they're asking for, so that I can apply it in my mixes? So he puts himself in the front line, so to speak, so that he can keep up with today's creativity.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still doing that anymore, but that was an interview from like 6-7 years ago.
That's really important. So I actually think that because of the natural flow of this intro, I want to change the topic of this episode.
Let's do it.
Something that we usually do is we plan an episode or plan to talk about something, and then we change topic because of what we talk about.
It's our tangents, people.
It's beautiful, man. I think I want to talk about the importance and power of curiosity in our industry.
Yeah.
And I want to first start off with a very interesting observation that I'm making a lot. Something that a lot of humans, regardless of culture, struggle with, but especially those coming from dualistic cultures. Mm-hmm. dualistic usually meaning the belief in black and white, good versus evil, God versus Satan. Most monotheistic religions are very dualistic by nature, and thus I think societies built on dualistic religions do have a observational tendency to prefer explanations, prefer explaining the ambiguous, and prefer to justify decisions with good versus evil, with many cases false dichotomies, false
or
binaries.
better or worse, I guess you could say, like, one, it may not be evil, but there's a clear reason for one or the other. Yeah. Or at least their belief in that.
So this is a problem that I perceive in a lot of these dualistic systems and countries. And this is actually even an issue that is difficult to overcome, a personal bias that is really difficult to overcome, even in non-dualistic societies, is this concept of trying to prove moral superiority. Now, this is something that I've been noticing more often, and then I got on the phone with our old friend Braden Flint. I call him every few months, and every time we talk, we're such good friends that we just like talk for over an hour. So Braden, if you're listening, shout out to you. We love you, brother.
What up, bro?
And Braden and I, we were talking. He's, as y'all know, he's the former host of the exclusive content, and now he is getting a master's degree at University of Ohio, or Ohio State University. I don't know if those are the same things.
Ohio.
I don't know. Ohio. He's getting school in Ohio.
Wait, is he still living in Texas, or did he move to Ohio?
Nope, he's in Ohio now. He's in Ohio, and he's studying to become. He's studying psychology to become a counselor or therapist. And one of the things that they talk about a lot, and one of the things that he says he struggles a lot with a personal level, even though he's taught this almost every day, and was reminded all the time not to enforce your own impose your own value system on others. So, for example, I just got off a video, and I hate to say this, so I have a very guilty pleasure that I will admit to everybody here. For some reason, love Asmongold.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to say you subscribe to my OnlyFans.
Yeah, dude, that's what it is. I subscribe to Lou's OnlyFans. For some reason, I am a huge fan of Asmongold. I don't know why. It's a guilty pleasure. I am partially ashamed to admit it, okay? I don't know why. And I just got off, talking to you as well. You, Lou, you and Anna, since now you're married, you guys are technically dinks. Dual income, no kids, dinks.
I love it. I don't fully understand it, but I love it.
And in this Asmongold video where he's reacting to someone talking about dinks, he's like, he's talking to the chat, and he's like, why do you feel the need to impose your own value system on others? He's like, what are you, retarded? No, he didn't. I don't know if he said that, but that sounds like something he would say.
That's Shane Gillis.
Why would you do that? Like, yes, they have different value systems, and like he kind of approaches things in sometimes an overly logical way. I find very fascinating. And he's like, why would you do that? That doesn't make sense. Why do you want... As a human, isn't it strange that you desire to impose your own value system on someone else? Now, I think there's reasons why we do that, including I'm not a psychologist or an anthropologist here, but I think something to do with in-group keeping in order to create a sense of order and trust within communities. I think that's really important. We're not going to talk about that necessarily. But I mostly am talking about my desire to impose my value systems on others. This even goes to show of like something very, very subtle, like I work out. I think you should be working out. Now, how do you? God. But this is very fascinating, right? This is very fascinating because to a certain degree, people should be working out. But it's also incorrect for me to impose and say that my value system is superior. I mean, that's like the basis of racism, like the basis of sexism, like of any sense of ism or discrimination is this imposing of personal values on other people. And so how do you balance increasing the standards of values and kind of choosing things, engaging with, encouraging higher standards of values. And this goes into the arts too, without making people feel like shit, without discriminating. And this is just a thought that I'm having, and a line of questions that I'm having right now that I have no answer or idea to present to the podcast right now. I have no idea. My only current thought right now is more, first off, is on an individual level, before we go into community and society, which I think is like, for example, like we should eventually start having children, right? Because we were talking about dinks. But like on an individual level, I don't think it's ever fair or ever valid for me to impose my values to somebody else, right? Yeah. I think jazz is better as a genre than punk music, than trap music.
Hey,
even
man,
as something as simple.
We
as
all know
like,
that trap is poetically the best.
That's not the best, right? But then what if there is some truth to like, okay, the culture of constantly talking about the violence in E-Block, right? In Chicago. Like, is that, like, when is there going to be pushback? When are we going to start seeing that, like, okay, people are using these things back? Like, when is it correct? I have no idea. But this is something that, talking about today, remaining curious, I think is really, really important. So that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm just kind of like letting you peer into the mind of Dee Kei, where he's at right now.
You know what? That sounds like a YouTube channel already. Peering into the mind of Dee Kei. I'm sorry, but like when I hear this, have you ever seen the infographics show?
Dude, the infographic show? Yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
Yeah. You never seen it?
The infographic show, yeah.
Okay, so I'm envisioning like peering into the mind of Dee Kei. As you're kind of going through your mindset, there's also all the animations going on. They're talking about, then the plane was going down.
It's just a monkey with a wrench hitting the computer.
Yeah, you just see like the non-audible characters just like.
It's just a hairy ape getting mad at ChatGPT for not knowing enough.
Yeah, you know, it is kind of funny because, like, so there is the notion of, like, all right, there's a sense of superiority in everyone that is kind of just trying to prove that what their choices are the right ones, if that makes sense. Like, you gave the example of going to the gym.
Which probably stems from a need for validation.
Or, yeah.
Which in other words, like sometimes I just want to be validated because I don't want to feel crazy, not because I want to feel better about myself, but I just want to feel not crazy.
Yeah, because
which is still validation.
When I first started going to the gym, we had our friend who would actually be like, "Dude, we're gonna make you look like a Greek god. Oh, this, that. We gotta go. No, if you really want it, you gotta cut your food. You gotta do this. You gotta do that." And to an extent, the communication of what it takes to get to a certain point isn't necessarily the issue. Like, hey, we all have to hit our goals, and sometimes you got to make certain sacrifices to hit certain goals. But that doesn't mean that your goal is the same goal as everyone else's, right? Like, for me, it was when I started going to the gym, it was the concept of I can't ask anyone to take me seriously unless I can take myself seriously. You know? That's always kind of been the motivation behind going to the gym. Well, the person that got me going to the gym was like, "Nah, bro, we got to get you a six-pack. Your wife is going to think you're fucking sexier now." And I'm like, you know, I've never had an issue with that, to be honest. Like, that's definitely not aligning with the reasons why I do something. But, like, the push behind it was so constant that it's like, at a certain point, it's like, I'm going to have to step back from that for a little bit. I'm going to go work out by myself for a little bit. I don't want to be at the gym 3 hours a day. I'm already there like an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes. That extra hour really feels more emotionally draining than beneficial at a certain point. And it's kind of funny because, like, I still go to the gym, but I do it without this person and without the mindset of this person. So when you think about, like, the pushback in music, when we start to say, like, our music is better, my version of production is better, the way I mix vocals is the superior way. When you start, like, communicating that out loud in such a way that, like, you're trying to prove it, like that sense of needing the validation of saying, yeah, no, you're right, that is the better way, he really knows what he's doing, people will start to walk away from you. And it actually, I've never really seen it be the reason that people are successful. Usually people are successful because other people believe that what they're doing is good and they're not a douche about it. A good example of this is like our friend Tizio. Whenever you heard Tizio ever say like, "Oh, I'm an amazing mix engineer, I'm better than so and so," blah blah blah. No, he's actually constantly talking about his collaborations with other people, and I've never really seen him be the type of person to put the spotlight on himself, but rather other people putting the spotlight on him. Even before like the big Chris Brown records, back when I met him, like I want to say like 2019, 2018. He was always very open to like collaboration and kind of like picking everybody else's brains too. So like it was a really cool way of seeing like, okay, this guy's not pushing an agenda, and because of that, a lot of people are kind of attracted to be around him. And because of that, he's still relevant in the room. But a lot of people who have been very pushy on certain mindsets, agendas, way of moving or doing the work and talking about superiority, they tend to kind of get, lost in the sauce of it all and not realize, hey, I'm kind of walking myself out of this room.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting situation.
And how you subconsciously project this feeling of validation and superiority is different for everyone too. Like I can only talk about the way that I express it and how I've subconsciously expressed it or consciously expressed it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think like, for example, like, never mind. I'm not going to talk about that. But the need to be curious, which is, again, the point of this episode, I think is so incredibly important and very practical. I think this is a very, if you're familiar with, if you've done therapy for any sense of time, for any amount of time, I think eventually you'll learn the importance, something that your therapist may say is like,
how does that make you feel?
The importance of staying curious. Well, no, that too, but also like the importance of remaining curious. Like, so this is something, so I think I've mentioned this in the past, and you should think like a Buddhist monk, right? Like, especially as a creative, it is important for you to think like a Buddhist monk. Mm-hmm. On the wall of any normal Christian or on the wrist of any normal Christian, you might see the phrase, "What would Jesus do? How would Jesus react in this situation?" But in the Buddhist monk's mind, the thing that is posted on the wall, the thing that you would save on your screensaver and to continually remind yourself and look at, is the question, are you sure? Does this person dislike you? Are you certain? Mm-hmm. Probably not, unless they've told you outright. And even if they did tell you outright, are you certain that they know exactly what they're talking about, that they're not going to change their mind?
Yeah. Right? It's kind of funny. What is it? Assumptions make an ass of you and I. I've had people who have told me like, "Oh, I thought you didn't like me." I was like, "No, I hate to tell you, but if you're ever reaching out to me, I tend to stay busy and I get distracted very easily. So I tend to ignore my phone as much as I possibly can. And if it's not related to the work in front of me, I try to not respond to things right away, and I just kind of forget about things. It's not that I'm actively trying to be an asshole to you, but to be 100% honest, I kind of am this way. Like, reach out to me, I'll get back to you at a certain point, but like, I don't dislike you. It's just, I'm sorry that I am this way.
It's really funny. So the most important thing, and to be quite frank, I'm going to word it a little bit rough, but I'm going to say the fairly correct way to approach everything. Correct is very, very nuanced here. The word correct is very nuanced in meaning. But the correct way to approach most situations is with a form of curiosity. It's okay to form opinions. But for example, in the eyes of even someone that believes in individual psychology, right, like Alfred Adler, he in his book Courage to be Disliked, he specifically mentions is being short a positive or negative thing?
If you're on a roller coaster, positive, because you probably fit better than I do.
Well, here's the thing too. It's like it is completely neutral.
Yeah.
And our perception of it is so, for example, if I am really insecure about my height, then it becomes a negative thing. If I really genuinely believe that no cute girl will ever like me as a man, first off, that's saying that I value girls thinking that I'm cute, right? So that's like another personal thing. And then on top of that,
guys?
I believe all the girls that I'm attracted to prefer taller guys. So thus I perceive my height to be negative, right? But height truly in itself is super neutral, very neutral. The fact that that we have this podcast, it's super neutral.
Yeah.
My chosen sports teams is very neutral. In most cases, most things are neutral. And then we project our own perception and values onto these things.
You know, it's one of my favorite things to do. Anytime people do bring up like sports, like, because there's always the right teams to be fans of. I don't know when this happened, but when I was in high school, I was a fan of the Eagles, and they went to the Super Bowl. They didn't win. It was like they had started strong, ended really badly. Like, I don't know what the hell happened after halftime. But my favorite thing is to see people's reactions, because I'm like, why does it matter if I like the Eagles? Like, I don't even watch the season half the time. Like realistically, I cared more for like the end of the season than I do anything else. But like, it's just more entertaining to see a reaction to me liking the Eagles than football itself.
Dude, yeah, it's very, once you're paying attention, if you can be mindful and present, it's this sounds pretty condescending, but I mean this in a very neutral way, which is it's very entertaining and at the very least fascinating and interesting to see people unintentionally react to information that you provide that they perceive not in their value system.
Yeah.
When you say that you're a fan of the Eagles and they hate the Eagles, and you just very, very consciously and in the moment don't say anything, you stay quiet, and you watch them have a chain reaction of thoughts and emotions. This is what I mean by staying curious. This is a very practical application of staying curious. When you remove your need for validation and to prove moral superiority by saying, no, the Eagles are good, remove the need to become defensive, because you know objectively that it's a neutral thing to care. In fact, it's just about fucking sports. Like, nobody cares.
Look,
like,
man, we're
not,
tossing the ball
care.
and having fun.
Yeah, but when you look at it in that with that lens, it becomes a very interesting, peculiar human experience. And the reason why I say human experience here too, and my hopes to describe it in that way, is to build compassion and empathy, because that's what you should be feeling. Like, ideally, once you recognize everything is truly neutral, you will and like acceptance of sense, there will be a building a swelling feeling of compassion towards others. Like, this is a very human experience they're having, right?
Yeah.
Like, this person right now who hates the Eagles, and they might be an asshole to you for a moment. They might regret being an asshole for you, and they might feel like they did you wrong because you didn't respond, right? And you're just like, yeah, whatever. Who knows? Who knows how they're gonna feel? If you get defensive, then what you do is you give them ammunition, you give them reason to not think about it later, to never apologize, to double down, which is another very human reaction. So it's just best to turn the other cheek, right? And to remain neutral on this. The reason why I bring this up is, first off, going back to my beginning phrase, which is in this dualistic society, which is very human. Again, I find it to be very human across all cultures and across all people. Something that a form of, I don't want to call it enlightenment, that's the wrong word, but a form of awareness, self-awareness that most people don't achieve. I'm going to be quite frank. Most people don't achieve this level of self-awareness at any stage, at any age. The average person does not achieve this, is my argument. I believe that. And is my hypothesis. There we go. Is my hypothesis. Is the reason why this is important is that we have this human desire to explain everything. Now, I think I've talked about the the Eastern dragon and turning into the Western dragon. Have I talked about that on the podcast, Lou?
I don't think the
Okay,
Eastern
so
dragon.
look this up. This is actually pretty historically interesting. So dragons started in the East, in China, in Japan, Far East, right? Dragons fly in the air, just like in Zelda. Or if you've ever played Zelda, the new Tears of the Kingdom, dragons fly. They're serpent-like. They're known to be scary, frightening. Sure, they're serpent-like, and they fly in the air.
And they
Now,
drop
when
good
it comes
loot.
to the West, all of a sudden, these Europeans are like, why is it flying? There's no way that it can fly without wings. Thus, it gets wings. Why is it scary? It must eat people. And thus, they pillage villages, and they're terrifying beasts. Right? Same thing with breathing fire. There's something about that too, right? So like even we do this in the modern day too. Notice that in Japanese Godzilla movies, nobody at any given point has the need to explain where Godzilla's atomic fire breathing powers come from. And then you go to the West and
Do they never
Western
explain
renditions. No, there's no need to. It's just a crazy thing that he does. And then if you go to Western renditions of Godzilla, it's because he's got special glands and special organs, and it's actually radiation dropped into the bottom of the sea. It needs explanation. And without explanation,
I see
it
what
is
you're saying.
difficult to accept the reality. And this
It's
is
kind of
very-
funny
this is-
because like I feel like this is about like cartoons where when people question Dragon Ball Z, I'm like, listen, when I was a kid, I did not care about any of these details. But now that I'm an adult, I understand where the questions are coming from, but it doesn't help the show in any way to be asking these questions.
Yes, there you go. And it's to close this thought, this very human and especially Western desire to explain things, and which in my mind, in my observation, is a way of removing the need for curiosity, which for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to mark as morally inferior, going against everything that I've been saying, right? I'm going to mark as morally inferior on a personal level. This is very difficult. This is the time where it's like, okay, if everything is uncertain, if everything is meant to be ambiguous, how are you certain about talking about this? And this is where I'm going to say, this is why the Taoist phrase exists. Like, when I talk about the Tao, this isn't the real Tao that we're talking about. I have to use the vehicle of certainty to prove my point, but know that certainty in itself isn't, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, this is a very difficult and ambiguous topic to bring about. Okay. That being said, okay, so the reason why I bring this up, and the reason why I think this is so important for mixers, for music producers, for anybody in the creative endeavors, is this ability to stay open-minded, to stay curious, makes you a better customer service provider, which gives the clients better service, which brings you more clients, which makes you more money, right? There are very few things as white glove service providers in a creative industry that we can do that will bring clients back or spread word of mouth to bring more clients to us. And this is one of those few things, is providing a really great experience consistently, no matter who the client is. And in the beginning stages of my career, I found myself not being curious to prove my superior tastes in music in others. And that's in the way that I mix, that's in the way that I produce other people's music, that's the way that I accept their choices that they made and how I perceive them. They shouldn't have done this. This client is annoying to work with. I don't like this music. This music should have more kick, and they're not letting me do that. Their notes that they're asking me for are so bad that I no longer want to put my name on this record. Those are very classic first few year creative endeavor, very noob thought processes of and I will say this pretty daiton. What is daiton? Boldly. I will say this pretty boldly. Fucking immature. Very self-centered. Lacks self-awareness. Extremely unintelligent. And extremely uncreative. Okay? And if you take this personally because you find yourself having done this recently, good. This message is meant to burn in the pits of your soul and make you feel bad.
That's Pastor Dee Kei right there. It's meant to burn in your soul.
It's meant to make you feel bad. Because here's the thing. In the reality of this, if you are pursuing a career, this is bad. In most cases. There are statistically let me say that better. From my observational bias, there are very, very few people at me and Lu's level and above that do not have extremely high levels of openness and self-satisfaction, that feel the need to prove narcissistically. Narcissistically means a deep, low sense of self-confidence, an extremely low sense of self-confidence, consistently feels the need to prove creative taste, superiority in taste and creative endeavors. This is very bad. This is bad for business. This is bad for personal development. This is bad for society. There's very little good. It's not mindful. You are living in a reactionary state where you're reacting and you are not in control. This is not a practice of free will. Okay? Okay, sorry. I'm getting a little bit heated, which is good. People usually want that in the comments.
His blood pressure went up.
No, you know what makes my blood pressure go up?
Looking at me.
The fucking Easy Street Burgers, right, dude? Like one of the highest rated burger joints in LA. I went there. They're like, it tastes so good. I went there. It's the saltiest piece of shit I've ever had in my entire life.
Okay,
what LAans, Los Angeles or whatever mean by flavor is just salt. Okay. Holy crap!
So the same reaction for me. Once again, we're not talking superiority, but like when I got told Fat Sal's is amazing. I went to Fat Sal's. I looked at the menu and I'm like, all right, let me see what Fat Sal's is about. There's a line out the fucking window. Let me see this. I'm looking at it. I'm like, you mean to tell me that they took hash browns, they took corn dogs, and they took burgers, and they wrapped it in a burrito with hot Cheetos and nacho cheese in it? This sounds like diabetes in a fucking tortilla. Like, what is this shit? You take a bite into it and you're like, okay, arguably, if I was really high or really drunk, this like immense amount of fat actually would be amazing. That would be great. But like me walking in there sober, expecting this to be like a really damn good burger or really damn good like burrito with really quality meat or something. Like, why is there a line out the window? Like, I was like, holy, this is like the junkiest of junk foods I've ever had. Yet, you know what? No matter what my opinion is, they've got a line out the window. People like this. But when I took a bite of that, I'm like, I took one.
I've had a good experience from Fat Sal's. So
I didn't. I like. It was one of those where I'm like, I'll be honest. Like, I love a good steak, and so like when I have a steak that doesn't align with like what I call a good steak, I don't want to order a steak from that place again. So when I went there and I had like hash browns and hot Cheetos and everything in my burrito, I'm like, I don't know about this place. This is I just got out the bar and I need to sober up food.
Anyway, that's a classic Dee Kei and Lu tangent.
Yeah.
And in this moment, I'm going to remove neutrality. Too much salt on your burgers and on your food sucks. It sucks. It is. And talking about, that's why I brought it up because you talk about blood sugar or blood pressure.
Blood pressure.
And like the burger was so salty with every bite. I felt my blood pressure go up. It was insane how salty.
I'm sure it didn't help every breath either.
My cousin who was visiting from Japan, so I saw this place from TikTok, right? Mm-hmm. And my cousin from Okinawa, she lives in Tokyo, and she came over to visit us during New Year's, and I took her to this place because I was like, this is the highest rated spot in LA. You must love American burgers. Let's try it. And she's like, she posted on Instagram in Japanese, like, this is a hella salty burger. Not necessarily a compliment. And tagged the Easy Street Burgers. And then they reposted it so everybody could see the Japanese. This shit is way too salty. Made me laugh. Shit made me laugh. Anyway.
When marketing goes sideways on accident.
Yeah, dude. Whatever. It's Japanese characters look cool. That's like every person with Chinese.
What is it? Hot pot.
Dude. That's like the equivalent of like every single Japanese or Chinese character on like a non-Asian person's, like a tattoo on a non-Asian. person.
It's kind of funny. So, all right. This is gonna sound nerdy, but I'm about to side with what you just said. So just hear me out. There's something that Pokemon does with their cards when lettering is involved in the image. Specifically the image. Not in the text boxes or anything explaining the card. But one of my favorite cards is Mega Rayquaza EX. Ooh, whatever. But there's a shiny version of it, which means like the color change and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's a very detailed printed card. Like there's texture and everything involved. Cool. But across it, there's an attack called Emerald Break. On the English version of the card, Emerald Break across the image is written in Japanese characters. In Japan, which has a much nicer print quality and everything, like leave it to Japan to do fucking cool ass things, but their print quality is so much better, but then they invert the lettering to English. And I look at it and I'm like, this is ugly. Like, go back to the Japanese lettering. You shouldn't have why did you put it? But then, like, one of my friends who collects, and he's Japanese, is like, in Japan, they think it's cooler if you have the English lettering on the image. And I'm like, out here, we think it's cooler that we have the Japanese lettering on the image. Like, I prefer the Japanese card, but in this case, I prefer the English card.
But in truth, again, going back to our topic here, in truth, both are very neutral. It is the current 2024 perception of Asian cultures and our personal biases of thinking that that's cool that makes it cool. It's not necessarily cooler or worse, actually. And depending on where you go, like, let's imagine if it was written in, like, Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Is that cool? Is that less than? What is it other than our personal self-projection? Anyway, going back to this, hold on. Sorry, Lou.
No, you're good.
I would love to continue to talk about Pokemon, but let's end the episode
I'm
with
sure
some
you would.
thoughts here. Practical thoughts here, because I think this is heavily has to do with any sort of creative endeavor, but especially with what we do as mixers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I talked about this I've been talking about this more and more often, but this like Taoist idea, Zen and Taoist idea of like Wu Wei or Mui, like intentional non-reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give everybody that's listening right now some homework. I invite you, just one time, maybe a few times, someone brings up politics. The next time someone brings up politics, okay, usually politics or religion, really has a close-knit to people's hearts. Very easy to pull a reaction from or be put in a reactionary state. Ask them questions about that other person's beliefs. Find something that you vehemently disagree with. In that moment, take a breath, stop, listen to them, take another reaction, or take another moment, and ask them more questions on why they believe they do. And this is the most important part. Then eventually leave that conversation or change topics, having never imposing your own values and your own thoughts.
Ooh, a challenge.
That is a very difficult thing to do. And here's the thing. The reason why I impose this challenge is because if you can do this with religion or politics or whatever you tie closely to your chest, right? Whatever you keep close to your chest. If you can do that with that, then I think you can mindfully choose non-action and non-reaction when it comes to creative endeavors. when someone sends you a revision note that you may not agree with, take a breath. Take fucking 10 breaths if you need to. The point is, stop just for a moment. Embrace the stillness. Recognize its actual state, which is neutral. I have some clients that I self-project and self-perceive. Their notes are pretty, not incriminating. What's the word that I'm looking for? Are fairly not very thoughtful, very cold, and I project and perceive it as you're not good at your job. Almost 100% of the time, in reality, they just weren't thinking about your feelings. And they were just talking about the facts. I think that it should do this. And maybe they didn't even say I think. They said the kick drum is too loud. The drums are not quiet enough. They're too whatever their decision is. I self-project and self-perceive it as they think I'm wrong. No, actually they're wrong because I'm the one with more experience, right? Or I take it personally. But in reality, again, it is almost never personal. It's not. Take a breath. Realize that that note is what it is, which is fucking neutral. And who are you, what kind of an asshole are you to predetermine their emotional state and their hidden message that they meant, to determine what the hidden message was that they didn't explicitly state? Now, if they said that you suck as a mixer, you should have known how to do this, I can't believe you did this, you asshole, that is no longer neutral. You should probably take them for face value. Granted, you should give them the grace to be like, they're probably just having a bad day. That being said, most of the time, I don't think I've ever received a note like that. Ever. In my entire career. But I've perceived notes and I've read notes with that tone in my mind a lot. I find it very strange. Objectively very strange. Very human experience.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's like anytime I'm tasked with giving notes back, because especially in mastering, if something just doesn't sound right, the question is it that I believe it doesn't sound right, or is it actually something that if I were to turn this back in, they were hoping for a drastic change. They were hoping to, you know what I mean? It's one of those, sometimes the best move is to do nothing.
Yeah.
Just, hey, simple limiting, try to keep it as transparent as possible. They worked hard on the mix, so our goal is not to shape the mix in our vision, but rather elevate it to what their vision was, that they just needed that extra 5%, whatever. But sometimes I get a mix and I'm like, oof.
Yeah. And here's the thing.
This is boomy, you know? And now it's like, is this a projection of my taste, which is what they're potentially hiring me for? Or is this a projection of like, this is actually what I wanted it to sound like, but I can't achieve the final output that I'm after. I need your help with that final touch, you know? And that's the challenge, where it's like, sometimes even before you get the revision notes, you're asking yourself the question of what is it?
Dude, this is a fantastic parallel, a great example, because who's to say the mix is actually boomy? Because when you work with a client, they have their own form of hearing damage.
Yep.
Or just
or their own room with their own speakers.
Physical shape of their ears. The acoustics of their room, the tonal character of their speakers. Right? The placement of the speakers in their room. There's so many different variables in how a mix is perceived that there is no objective line to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I think but it's fascinating because at the end of the day, the client will love it. And once, this is a thought that I've stolen from Mixerman's book, Zen and the Art of Mixing. He says that there's never really, like, a mix, you can never determine if a mix is good until it's listened to in a state of permanence. Meaning that once the song is released and you listen to it again after release is probably one of the only ways that you can determine if a mix was good.
All right. So I'm going to give you 2 points. One is talking about that permanence, but it's semi-permanence. It's when you turn in the version 1 that all of a sudden, after you send out that email, you're like, damn, I think they're going to point out XYZ because I just heard XYZ in a new light because there's a semi-sense of permanence. It's more like, damn, did I really do the best that I could, right? It's an interesting detail where I think we've all done this. I don't know if you do this as much, but we try to put as much as we can into our work at the same time not overdoing our work, right? So we ask ourselves like, damn, did I do too much kick? Is there too much this or that? Because going back to the other point, which was like, hey, you know, what's to say what's a good mix or what's not? That only ever hits us, the people that actually worked on it, the artist, the mixer, the mastering, the recording, the musician. The musician might say like, damn, I probably could have added this lick and it would have made more impact or maybe a better transition on the producer's end or a better vocal take on the vocalist's end. Everybody has that kind of critique of themselves, but when me and you went to Atlantic for that event and we were listening to the KSD's main stack or whatever they're called, you showed me that song, Somebody's Son or Somebody Loves You. What was it called? The one with the dun, 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 dun.
Oh, King Baby.
King Baby. That's the one.
Yeah,
okay. And I do this motion because I really like that song. I really do like that song.
Just came out. Yeah.
So it was funny because I knew that we weren't listening in a controlled environment. We know that room wasn't treated with the sense of being like a dedicated mixing room for somebody. We know that it was set up as like, hey, this is a label session. They just need big speakers, a vocal chain. We ain't even got like a dedicated booth. We have a pseudo booth behind the desk. You know, it's as what I like to call like a practical setup. This serves many purposes. It's meant to be comfortable, big, wide open, whatever. Cool. You asked me, you're like, do you feel like there's a lot of like 100 to 150? And I was like, that never crossed my mind once. As an audience, I never thought about these little details. I never once thought, is this a good mix or a bad mix? I thought, this is a badass song. I like it. I like the chaoticness from the softness. I like the impact. I overall thought it was a good mix, but you were the only one to question it, but you were the one to work on it. So going back to the permanence view where you're like, I turned it in, this is what they accepted. I've been paid or not, whatever, who cares? But like, as an audience member, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I wish I worked on this. That's cool.
Very, very, yeah, that's interesting for you to talk about something that you perceived with me recently, like in the last month. Yeah, right? So, I mean, I think that's like the perfect example of like, okay, even I, who, you know, I think it would lack humility if I didn't say that I have, decent levels of awareness.
Yeah.
In that moment, did the normal human thing and heard it in a different way. All right.
And I do it all the time with anything I work on. That's why I know it's like, yeah, that sense of permanence hits me on version 1 emails.
Yeah.
It's like, shit, maybe, should I fix it now? I'm like,
it's terrifying.
Nah, dude, stop. Just wait for their notes. Their notes will tell you what needs to happen. But in my head, I'm running back every little modification I made to the mix.
Yeah. I'm going to end the episode with a couple thoughts here. I forgot the last thing I want to talk about. But the first thing, this is very important. That's what it was. Okay. I'm writing down my thoughts as they're coming to me. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to bring up, which is really important, I just got a text from my manager, so I need to end this episode and get on a call with him. Mm-hmm. But the first thing, so how do you combat, and this ties into the second thought too, and so we're going to go a couple levels deeper. We're already in a pretty deep level of awareness that we're talking about. I'm going to take it a couple steps further for those that are more advanced, or wanting to learn, are curious about the next levels further. In a world where people are constantly projecting, are constantly reactionary, are going to show their trauma in a reactionary, mean reaction to you. They belittle you. They hate you. It's scary. It's the reality. You become a little bit
Defensive?
No, you become scared of people, right? How do you return back to the sense of neutrality without the naivety, right? And this is in the book Courage to be Disliked. This is what Alfred Adler argues, and this is very important. And this is something that a classic therapist would say. Like, if you've taken any therapy, this is what the therapists say, is how someone reacts to your output, right? What you say is entirely up to them. It is not because of what you said that made them react. They reacted by their own choice. And you cannot change or determine how they're going to react based on how you say things. Because no matter how you say things, people have their own biases and filters that they look through things. So how do you return back to that? It's through courage and fully understanding, becoming mindful of the concept that it is their decision to react, not your prerogative to change the way that you speak to cater to their reactionary state. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Their decision is to react and to understand that place. That is their task, not yours. That is not your burden to carry. That is their choice and their freedom of will. So in order to honor that, all you can do is courageously, knowing that some people react negatively, courageously continuing to look at things neutrally, very mindfully, very awarefully. It's courage. How do you go back? And here's the thing too, and this is another concept. This is a Dee Kei-ism. This is a Dee Kei thought. Why is Harry Potter brave? Why are most Gryffindors in Harry Potter brave? I think that there are definitely many moments where people are choosing to be courageous in the moment, in the face of something frightening. But I think in most cases, it is perfect example of Wu Wei, or intentional non-action, sometimes unintentional, meaning most acts of courage are only given the title of courageous in retrospect. In the moment, they are often impulsive.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with that thought. The last thing that I'm going to say is I'm going to end this episode with, and this is the deepest level that we'll go for this episode, is there is a philosopher, Nishitani Keiji, Japanese philosopher, who loved Nietzsche and his concepts of nihilism, loved him, but disagreed with him on a few points. First point, nihilism. So once you fully recognize that everything is neutral, the Western reaction is, in order to explain the neutrality, is that nothing has meaning. And the common perception, the common understanding of this feeling is nihilism, something that Nietzsche talks a lot about, right? The dangers of nihilism, feeling no meaning in anything, right? Nothing has meaning. There's no point to me living. There's no point to life. Nothing has meaning. And then there's this new concept that people are trying to take on, which is optimistic nihilism, which isn't really a thing, but I think it's a really good approach to it. But anyway, Nishitani Keiji brings up two ideas that I think are fascinating, that are very important to the Western thinker and to the creative. Number one, three things technically. One, nihilism is felt differently to everyone. This is Eastern philosophy. Nothing really has any meaning. Nihilism isn't anything. It's not real, because nihilism is a specific flavor of feeling that you feel based on how you react to your surroundings, to your world. It is not the same when I feel nihilism, when you feel nihilism. Most people don't even ever feel a form of nihilism, but whenever people do, it's never actually the same thing. Thus, nihilism isn't actually real. It's not real. That's the first thing. Second thing, why is nihilism a problem to be solved? This is a very Western concept. Because you feel a form of nihilism, why is that bad? Why is that a problem to be solved? Eastern philosophers don't understand this. Nishitani Keiji brings this up. This is very Western in concept. It's not a problem to be solved. The third thing, and this is his argument, nihilism is not the end. It is actually the beginning and a necessary first step to achieve enlightenment. Mm-hmm. It is not coming back to step 2, it is not a problem to be solved. It is a natural and important first step to achieve enlightenment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Westerners have a hard time understanding this. So if this is a very deep level, you have to understand some basic philosophy here. The point of the this podcast is, and the fact that I find fascinating, is going back to the very beginning when I said I don't really have a thought or an answer to the problem that I was coming up with. Things are neutral. Things are ambiguous. That's okay. Lou, can you ever humans are smart and are dumb. There's so many variances of humans, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that there's ever been an ant that wrote a book?
No, on the sense of, have you ever seen a
we
book
can
by an
conceive
ant?
that. We can conceive that. An ant has probably never written a book. I can conceive that.
I was like, is this a trick question?
What are the chances that humans have understood the world and the universe?
Probably not likely.
And this is actually...
we barely know enough about our ocean compared to the fucking space.
I forgot what law this is. Oh, freak. I forgot what law this is. But the concept is, I forgot... Oh man, I forgot the source of this. Look this up. I could chat GPT this up, but I'm gonna just say it off the top of my head. I'm trying to recall it right now. Give me a little bit of moments here. I'm gonna close my eyes and think about this. A world that is simple enough to understand, a universe that is simple enough to understand, cannot produce minds that can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So, at no point are we ever going to understand. So, like, in the concept of the universe, the Tao, God, and his plans, right? Mm. However you want to paraphrase this, whether it's agnostically, theologically, or secularly, right? Mm-hmm. Humans range from 50 IQ to 200 IQ, whatever, and to understand the universe will probably take more than 10,000 IQ.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen. It will never happen. So the point is, embrace neutrality. And once you embrace neutrality and you perceive these connections as human, natural human responses, people being human, again, the point is, the reason why this is important is because it should, if done correctly, your heart should swell up with feelings of compassion and the desire to remove suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And that is our job as mixers. As mixers, we have insecure artists that just want to be perceived in the right light in this world through their music. Sometimes their deep feelings of
insecurity.
Self. No, their deep feelings of self are put on, identity and self is placed on how this music is received, regardless of whether that's healthy or not. I don't care. It's neutral. But it is my job to relinquish and to help the cessation of this suffering from the client. That is my job as a service provider.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's how you become good mixers. This is a really roundabout way, but what I'm trying to tell you right now is that it's not about the kick. It's not about the drums. It's not about the brightness. It's not about the vocals. It's about increased compassion and the cessation of suffering, and our role as mixers to guide the artists to that so they can release their music confidently. Right? Our role is not to self-determine what is the right way to project their form of self and identity and ego to the world. That is not our role. Our role is to be an everglass window that carries their light or their whatever. Maybe it's not light, right? Transparently and correctly, allowing them, we further magnify their intention, their goals, their vision. That's all we do. We do not distort. We do not color. We do not change. We do not correct. We do not impose superiority in taste. And on that note, go subscribe to the exclusive episodes of the Mixing Music Podcast. even if you don't listen to the exclusive episodes of the podcast and you want to support our podcast, you just want to leave a tip, right? Go to mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive. You can sign up for our exclusive episodes, $4 a month. You get access to over 200 episodes, and we release at least 1 or 2 episodes every single week, right? Technical tips as well. But again, even if you don't listen to any of those episodes, you just want to leave a tip, highly, highly thankful. If you want to purchase something, go to Sweetwater. Go to mixingmusicpodcast.com/Sweetwater, where we have an affiliate link, and we get a little kickback if you buy something. There are many other sponsors that we have. Go to mixingmusicpodcast.com to check out our sponsors. Thank you again. This episode is brought to you by Loughton Audio, by Antares, and by your boy, Mastered by Lou, and Daddy D. All right. On that note, happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy.
Boom.